It was one of those evenings when the rain just wouldn't stop. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay inside, wrapped in a blanket with something warm to drink. He was standing by the window of his small apartment, watching the drops race down the glass, when he heard it. A knock on the door. Not a normal knock. This one was hesitant, almost apologetic. He wasn't expecting anyone. His friends knew he usually stayed in on nights like this. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. But something made him walk to the door. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. When he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. There she was. The woman he thought he'd never see again. 3 months had passed since she walked out of his life without a word. 3 months of wondering what went wrong, of replaying their last conversation over and over, searching for clues he might have missed. She was completely soaked. Her hair stuck to her face in dark strands. Her jacket was dripping water onto the hallway floor, forming a small puddle around her feet. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder, and she was shivering. But it wasn't just from the cold. He could see it in her eyes. Something was different. Something was very wrong. She didn't say hello. She didn't apologize for showing up unannounced. She just looked at him with those haunted eyes and said 5 words that changed everything. I had nowhere else to go. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It shook slightly, like she was fighting to keep herself together. This wasn't the confident, independent woman he remembered. This was someone who looked like she'd been running for a very long time. He stood there for a moment, frozen. Part of him wanted to slam the door. She had hurt him when she left. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone one morning. Like she had never been there at all. He had spent weeks trying to reach her. Calls went straight to voicemail. Messages were never read. It was like she had vanished into thin air. But looking at her now, standing in his doorway drenched and trembling, all that anger seemed to melt away. Whatever had happened to her in those 3 months, it had broken something inside her. He could see it written all over her face. Come in, he finally said, stepping aside. She walked past him slowly, leaving wet footprints on his floor. She didn't take off her shoes. She didn't put down her backpack. She just stood there in the middle of his living room, dripping water, looking lost. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to her. She took it but didn't use it right away. She just held it, staring at nothing in particular. He noticed her hands were shaking. You should get out of those wet clothes, he said gently. You'll catch a cold. She nodded but didn't move. It was like she was somewhere else entirely, trapped in her own thoughts. He had to guide her to the bathroom, hand her some dry clothes, and close the door before she finally seemed to understand what to do. While she changed, he made tea. His mind was racing with questions, but he knew better than to bombard her with them right away. Whatever had brought her back to his doorstep on a rainy night, it wasn't something simple. When she came out of the bathroom wearing his old sweater and sweatpants, she looked smaller somehow. Younger. Vulnerable. She sat down on his couch without being asked, pulling her knees up to her chest and wrapping her arms around them. He handed her the tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug like it was the most precious thing in the world. The warmth seemed to bring her back a little bit. She took a small sip and closed her eyes. Where have you been? He asked softly. She opened her eyes but didn't look at him. Around, she said. Different places. Nowhere that mattered. Why did you leave? She was quiet for a long time. So long that he thought she might not answer at all. Then she said, I thought I was protecting you. From what? From me. From my mistakes. Her voice cracked on the last word. He wanted to push for more answers, but he could see she was barely holding herself together, so he let it go. For now, you can stay tonight, he said. We'll talk more in the morning. She nodded, relief washing over her face. He brought her a blanket and a pillow, setting up the couch for her. She thanked him quietly, and he went to his bedroom, leaving the door open just in case. But sleep didn't come easy. He lay awake, listening to the rain against the window, wondering what kind of trouble she had gotten herself into. Every time he started to drift off, he'd hear a small sound from the living room. A shift in position. A quiet sigh. She wasn't sleeping either. Around 3 in the morning, he got up to use the bathroom. When he came out, he nearly jumped. She was standing in the hallway, just outside his bedroom door. In the darkness, her silhouette looked almost ghost-like. "Sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to scare you. Can't sleep?" She shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see things I don't want to see." He didn't know what to say to that. So he just stood there with her, in the quiet darkness. Two people who used to know each other so well, now feeling like strangers. "Why did you come back to me?" he finally asked. "After all this time, why my door?" She looked up at him then, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, he could see tears in her eyes. "Because you're the only person I trust. The only person I know won't turn me away. Even after what I did to you." His heart ached at those words. She was right. Even after everything, he couldn't turn her away. Maybe that made him a fool. Maybe it made him weak. But in that moment, none of that mattered. "Go back to the couch," he said gently. "Try to rest. I'm here if you need anything." She nodded and turned to go. But then she stopped and looked back at him. "Thank you," she said, "for not asking too many questions, for not making me leave. We'll figure this out," he told her, though he had no idea if that was true. She went back to the couch, and he returned to his bed. But he didn't close his door all the way. Something told him she needed to know he was close by, that she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, he woke up early. The rain had finally stopped, and weak sunlight was filtering through the curtains. He got up quietly and walked to the living room to check on her. She was awake, sitting on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket, staring out the window. She hadn't slept at all. He could tell by the dark circles under her eyes, by the way she held herself so tense, like she was waiting for something bad to happen. "Morning," he said softly. She turned to look at him, and for just a second, he saw the old her, the woman who used to smile at him over morning coffee. But then it was gone, replaced by that haunted look again. "I should probably leave," she said. "Where will you go?" She didn't have an answer for that. She just looked down at her hands. "Stay," he said, "at least for a few days, until you figure things out. I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." She studied his face, looking for something. Maybe she was trying to figure out if he really meant it. Or maybe she was trying to decide if she could trust herself to stay. "Okay," she finally whispered. "Just for a few days." But even as she said it, both of them knew it wouldn't be that simple. Whatever she was running from, whatever had brought her back soaked in rain to his doorstep, it wasn't going to be solved in a few days. This was just the beginning of something much bigger, much more complicated than either of them could imagine. The first full day she stayed with him was strange. She followed him everywhere. Not in an obvious way, but he noticed. When he went to the kitchen to make breakfast, she appeared in the doorway within minutes. When he sat down to work on his laptop, she settled on the other end of the couch, always keeping him in her line of sight. It wasn't like she was being clingy or needy. It was something else. Something that made him uneasy. She watched him like she was afraid he might disappear if she looked away for too long. Or maybe she was afraid something else would appear if she wasn't paying attention. He tried to act normal, to give her space while still being present. But it was hard to focus on anything with her sitting there, wound up tight like a spring ready to snap. By the second day, he noticed other things too. She barely ate. He'd make her a plate of food, and she'd pick at it, moving things around but hardly taking a bite. When she did eat, It was mechanical, like she was forcing herself to go through the motions of staying alive. She didn't sleep either. He knew because he'd wake up in the middle of the night to get water, and she'd be sitting up on the couch in the dark, just staring, sometimes at the window, sometimes at the door, always alert, always watching. On the third day, he found her checking the locks on his front door. Not once, but 3 times in a row. She'd turn the deadbolt, check the handle, then unlock it and lock it again, as if testing to make sure it was really secure. "Everything okay?" he asked. She jumped at the sound of his voice, spinning around with wide eyes. For a second, she looked terrified. Then, she seemed to remember where she was and who he was. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I just wanted to make sure it was locked." "It's locked. I always lock it." "I know. I just needed to check." He didn't push it. But that night, he noticed her doing the same thing with the windows. She went from room to room, checking each one, making sure they were secure. One window in his bedroom was slightly open for fresh air. She closed it and locked it tight. "I like to have that one open," he said from the doorway. "Please keep it closed," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "Just for now." The way she said it made him agree without argument. There was real fear in her voice. Whatever she was afraid of, it was serious. That night, he woke up around 2 in the morning. Something had pulled him out of sleep, though he couldn't say what. He lay there in the darkness, listening. That's when he heard it. Soft footsteps in his living room. Then the quiet sound of his front door opening. His heart jumped into his throat. Was someone breaking in? Was this what she'd been afraid of? He got out of bed as quietly as he could and crept toward the living room. The door was open, just a crack, and he could see her standing there, peering out into the hallway. She was still in her sleeping clothes, but she was wide awake, alert. "What are you doing?" he whispered. She quickly closed the door and locked it. "I thought I heard something." "What kind of something?" "Footsteps. In the hallway." They stopped right outside the door. He listened carefully. The building was old, and sounds carried. But he didn't hear anything unusual. "It's probably just a neighbor coming home late." "Maybe," she said, but she didn't sound convinced. They stood there in the dark for a few more minutes, both listening. Finally, she went back to the couch, but he could tell she wouldn't sleep. He almost went back to bed, but something made him grab a blanket and sit in the chair across from her. "You don't have to stay up with me," she said softly. "I know, but I am anyway." They sat together in the quiet darkness, and slowly, he saw her shoulders relax just a little bit. Having someone else awake, someone else watching, seemed to ease her anxiety slightly. "When are you going to tell me what happened?" he asked after a while. She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then she said, "I made a mistake. A big one. And now, I'm paying for it." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind that follows you. The kind that doesn't let go." "That's not really an answer." "I know." She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "I'm not trying to be mysterious. I just don't know how to explain it without making you part of it too." "I think I'm already part of it," he said. "You're staying in my apartment. You're clearly terrified of something. Whatever this is, it's already here." She looked at him then. Really looked at him. And he saw something shift in her expression, like she was weighing whether to trust him with the truth. "There are people looking for me," she finally said. "What people?" "Dangerous people. People I should never have gotten involved with." His stomach dropped. "What do you mean, involved with?" "I met someone a few months before I left. He seemed normal at first. Successful. Charming. Connected. He offered me a job. Easy money for simple work. Or so he said. I was struggling with rent, with bills. It seemed like a good opportunity." "What was the job?" She hesitated. delivering things, making introductions, setting up meetings. Nothing that seemed wrong at the time. But slowly, I started noticing things. The people I was meeting weren't regular business people. The packages I was delivering weren't normal documents. By the time I realized what was actually going on, I was already in too deep. He felt his chest tighten. What were you involved in? I can't tell you everything. It's safer if you don't know all the details. But let's just say these people don't operate within the law. And they don't appreciate anyone who tries to walk away from them. Is that why you left? To get away from them? She nodded. I thought if I disappeared, if I cut all ties and went off the grid, they'd forget about me. I thought I could just vanish and start over somewhere new. That's why I left without telling you. I thought if you didn't know where I was, you'd be safe. They couldn't use you to find me. But something went wrong. Everything went wrong. Her voice cracked. They found me anyway. And now they know about you too. I shouldn't have come here. I've put you in danger just by showing up at your door. But I had nowhere else to go. I've been moving from place to place, staying in shelters, sleeping in my car. I ran out of money, out of options. And I was so tired of being alone, of being scared every single second. He processed this information slowly. Part of him wanted to be angry that she'd brought danger to his doorstep. But looking at her, seeing how broken and exhausted she was, he couldn't find it in himself to be mad. How do you know they found you? He asked. I've seen the same car 3 times in the past week. Different locations, but the same car. Black sedan with tinted windows. That's how they operate. They watch first. Make sure you're alone. Make sure you're vulnerable. Then they make their move. Have you gone to the police? She laughed bitterly. The police can't help with this. These people have connections everywhere. Going to the police would just make things worse. So what's your plan? Just keep running forever? I don't know, she whispered. I don't have a plan anymore. I'm just trying to survive one day at a time. They sat in silence after that. Outside, the city was quiet, except for the occasional car passing by. He thought about everything she'd told him. It sounded like something from a movie, not real life. But the fear in her eyes was very real. The way she jumped at every sound was very real. We'll figure something out, he said finally. You're not alone anymore. We'll find a way to fix this. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head. These aren't people you fix things with. These are people you run from and hope they never catch you. Then we'll run together if we have to. But I'm not letting you go through this alone. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Why are you helping me? After what I did to you, why would you risk yourself for me? He thought about that question. The truth was complicated. Maybe it was because he still cared about her, despite everything. Maybe it was because seeing someone so scared and desperate awakened something protective in him. Or maybe it was simply because it was the right thing to do. Because everyone deserves someone in their corner, he said. And right now, I'm in yours. She didn't say anything. But a single tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, trying to stay strong. But he could see the relief in her face. For the first time since she'd shown up at his door, she didn't look quite so alone. The next morning, his suspicions were confirmed. When he left for work, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows, just like she'd described. Someone was watching his building. He didn't tell her right away. He didn't want to send her into a panic. But that evening, when he came home, she was already at the window, staring down at the street. It's there, she said without turning around. He walked over to stand beside her. Sure enough, the black sedan was still parked in the same spot. How long has it been there? 1. All day. I've been watching. His mind raced. If these people really were dangerous, if they really were watching, Then things were about to get much more complicated. They couldn't just sit here and wait for something to happen. "Pack your things," he said suddenly. "Just the essentials." She turned to look at him with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" "We're leaving. Not forever, just for tonight. We'll stay somewhere else, somewhere they won't expect. Give us time to think, to come up with a real plan. They'll follow us. Not if we're smart about it. We'll take the back exit through the parking garage. We'll use my friend's car instead of mine. They won't know which vehicle to follow." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then slowly, she nodded. "Okay. Let's go." They moved quickly, gathering only what they absolutely needed. He called his friend, made up an excuse about car trouble, and arranged to borrow his vehicle. Within 30 minutes, they were sneaking out through the parking garage, climbing into an unfamiliar car, and driving away into the night. As they pulled out onto the street, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The black sedan was still parked in the same spot, watching his building. They hadn't noticed the escape. Beside him, she let out a long breath she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond, just kept driving. His heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was real now. Whatever trouble she was in, he was in it too. There was no going back. They drove for almost an hour, finally stopping at a small motel on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that didn't ask questions and took cash payments. He rented a room under a fake name, and they locked themselves inside. The room was small and shabby, but it felt safer than his apartment had. At least here, no one knew where they were. At least for tonight, they could breathe. She sat on the edge of the bed, looking exhausted. "What do we do now?" "Now," he said, pulling out his phone. "We start figuring out how to end this. Whatever it takes." The motel room became their temporary refuge. For 2 days, they barely left, except to get food from the diner next door. He called in sick to work, something he never did, but this was more important. They needed time to think, to plan, to figure out their next move. During those 2 days, she finally started opening up more. Little pieces of the story came out, bit by bit, like she was testing to see if he could handle the truth. It started one afternoon when they were sitting on the motel bed, eating takeout from plastic containers. She'd been quiet all morning, but suddenly she spoke up. "His name was David," she said. "The man who got me into all this." He put down his food and listened. "I met him at an art gallery. One of those opening night events where they serve cheap wine and everyone pretends to understand abstract paintings. I was only there because my friend dragged me along. David was charming, well-dressed, confident. He struck up a conversation about the artwork, and before I knew it, we'd been talking for an hour. What did he want from you?" At first, nothing. He just seemed interested in getting to know me. We exchanged numbers, went for coffee a few times. He told me he worked in consulting, helping businesses make connections. It all seemed legitimate. Then one day, he mentioned he needed someone to help with a project. Someone trustworthy and discreet. He offered to pay me $2,000 for one evening's work. He let out a low whistle. "That's a lot of money." "Exactly. I was 3 months behind on rent. My car was about to be repossessed. That money would have solved all my immediate problems. So I said yes, without asking too many questions." "What did he have you do?" She set down her food, her appetite clearly gone. "He gave me a package and an address. All I had to do was deliver it to a specific person at a specific time. That's it. Walk in, hand it over, walk out. Easiest $2,000 I'd ever make, or so I thought. But it wasn't that simple. No, the address was a high-end restaurant. The person I was delivering to was sitting in a private room in the back. When I walked in, there were 4 men in expensive suits having a very intense conversation. They stopped talking the moment I appeared. I handed over the package, and one of them opened it right there. Inside were documents, photographs, what looked like financial records. One of the men looked at me and asked if I'd looked inside. I said no. He asked if I knew what I was carrying. Again, I said no. Then, he smiled and said, "Good. That's how we like it." That must have been terrifying. It was. But I took the money and left. I told myself it was just business. That lots of companies have confidential documents delivered by third parties. But deep down, I knew something was off. I just chose to ignore it because I needed the money. And then David asked you to do more jobs. She nodded. He called me a week later with another opportunity. This time, it was $3,000. Then, $5,000. Each job was similar but slightly different. Sometimes, I delivered packages. Sometimes I picked up packages. Sometimes, I just had to be present at a meeting. Sitting in the background, like decoration. David said having someone like me there made the meetings seem more legitimate, less suspicious. How long did this go on? 3 months. I did maybe 20 jobs total. The money was incredible. I paid off all my debts, bought a new car, moved into a better apartment. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning financially. I felt like I was finally getting ahead in life. Number 4. Number 4. Also 4. Number 4. When did you realize what you were really involved in? She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. There was a meeting I attended about 6 weeks before I left you. It was at a warehouse on the industrial side of town. I was supposed to just sit there and look professional while David and his associates met with some potential business partners. But this meeting was different. The people who showed up weren't wearing suits. They looked dangerous, and they were talking about things that made my blood run cold. Distribution networks, territory disputes, payment collections. I realized then that I wasn't working for some shady but legal business. He felt a chill run down his spine. What did you do? I finished the meeting because I was too scared to walk out. But afterward, I told David I was done. I said I didn't want any more jobs. He just smiled and said, "That's not how this works." He said I'd seen too much, knew too many faces, been to too many meetings. I couldn't just walk away. If I wanted out, I'd have to earn it. What did he mean by that? He said I had to do one more job, a big one, something important. If I did it successfully, they'd let me go with no questions asked. He said I'd be free and clear, and they'd even pay me $50,000 as a goodbye bonus. And you believed him? I didn't have a choice. He made it clear that refusing wasn't an option. He knew where I lived, where I worked, who my friends were. He even mentioned your name once, casually, like it meant nothing. But the message was clear. If I didn't cooperate, people I cared about would get hurt. He felt his stomach turn. That's when you left me, to protect me. Yes. I couldn't tell you the truth, because I didn't want you involved. I thought if I just disappeared from your life, you'd be safe. They wouldn't have any reason to come after you. So I broke your heart on purpose, made you think I didn't care anymore, and cut all contact. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I thought it was the right choice. What was the job they wanted you to do? Her hands started shaking. She clasped them together tightly, trying to stay calm. They wanted me to attend a meeting between David's organization and another group. A rival group, I think. The meeting was supposed to be a negotiation, a way to divide up territory or settle some dispute. My job was simple. I was to deliver a package to one of the rival leaders, supposedly a gift as a gesture of goodwill. But something felt wrong about the whole setup. Did you do it? I went to the meeting. It was at a hotel downtown, in one of the conference rooms. There were maybe 10 people there total. David's people on one side, the rivals on the other. The tension in the room was thick. Everyone was armed. I could tell even though the weapons weren't visible. I handed over the package like I was supposed to. The rival leader opened it. Inside was a very expensive watch and a bottle of rare whiskey. He seemed pleased. The meeting continued. So what went wrong? She took a deep breath. I needed to use the bathroom, so I stepped out into the hallway. That's when I saw them. More of David's people, arriving through a side entrance. They weren't dressed for a meeting. They were dressed for something else. And they were moving with purpose, heading toward the conference room. I realized in that moment that the meeting was a setup. Something bad was about to happen. What did you do? I panicked. I didn't know what to do. If I went back into the room, I'd be caught in whatever was about to go down. If I ran, they'd know I'd seen them. So I did the stupidest thing possible. I hid in a nearby storage closet and I took out my phone. I started recording everything I could hear through the door. You recorded it? Audio only, but yes, I heard shouting, threats, the sounds of a fight. Then gunshots. Not many, just 2 or 3. Then silence. Then footsteps running. Then more shouting. I stayed hidden in that closet for 2 hours, terrified, listening to sirens in the distance, to people leaving, to David's voice on the phone saying the situation was handled. He stared at her in shock. You witnessed a crime. Not witnessed exactly. But I heard it, and I recorded it. When I finally came out of that closet, the conference room was empty. There was blood on the floor. Chairs were overturned. But no bodies. No evidence. They'd cleaned up fast. I walked out of that hotel in a daze, got in my car, and just drove. I didn't stop driving until I was 3 states away. The recording. Do you still have it? Not on my phone. I was scared they'd find me and make me delete it. So I uploaded it to a cloud storage account using a fake email. Then I bought a thumb drive, downloaded the file onto it, and hid the drive somewhere safe before ditching my phone and laptop. As far as David knows, I don't have any evidence of what happened that night. But you do. Yes, and that's why they're looking for me. Not just because I disappeared, but because they're not sure what I saw or heard. They're not sure if I have anything that could hurt them. They need to find me, to make sure I'm not a threat. He ran his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. This is bigger than I thought. This isn't just about you running from some bad people. You have evidence of a serious crime. You're a witness. I'm not a witness. I didn't see anything. But you heard it. You recorded it. That makes you a witness, whether you like it or not. She stood up and started pacing the small motel room. I can't go to the police. These people have connections. David told me once that they have people on the inside, cops and officials who look the other way or feed them information. If I go to the police, it might get back to them before anything can be done. So what's your plan? Keep running forever? I don't have a better idea. He thought for a moment, then pulled out his laptop. What if we could find out more about David and his organization? If we knew exactly who we were dealing with, we might be able to figure out the safest way to handle this. How would we do that? The internet is a powerful tool. If these people are as connected as you say, there might be news articles, court records, something that gives us more information. And I have a friend who's really good with computers. Maybe he can help. She looked skeptical. The more people who know about this, the more dangerous it becomes. I trust him. And we need help. We can't figure this out alone. After a long pause, she finally nodded. They spent the rest of the evening researching. She gave him all the names she could remember, all the details about the meetings and locations. He took notes, searched databases, looked for patterns. It was slow work, but gradually, a picture started to form. David's organization was bigger than they'd thought. There were connections to multiple cities, multiple businesses that seemed legitimate on the surface, but had questionable ties underneath. There were news articles about investigations, about arrests that never led to convictions, about witnesses who disappeared or changed their stories. "These people are good at what they do," he said, staring at the computer screen. "They know how to avoid serious consequences. That's why I'm scared," she said quietly. "People like this don't just let loose ends walk away." Late that night, as she finally fell asleep from exhaustion, he sat awake thinking. She'd been carrying this burden alone for months, terrified and isolated. No wonder she'd come back to him. No wonder she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop checking the locks. He made a decision then. They couldn't keep running. Running was just delaying the inevitable. Somehow, they needed to find a way to end this, to make her safe for real, not just temporarily. The recording was the key. It was evidence. Evidence that could potentially bring down David's entire organization if used correctly. But using it was dangerous. It meant going on the offense instead of defense. It meant stepping out of the shadows instead of hiding. But what choice did they have? Living in fear forever wasn't really living at all. The next morning, he made a phone call. Not to the police, not yet, but to someone who might know what to do. Someone who dealt with situations like this, professionally. When she woke up and found out what he'd done, she was angry at first. "You shouldn't have done that without asking me." "I know. But we need help. Real help. And I think I found someone who can give it to us." "Who?" "A lawyer. Not just any lawyer. One who specializes in whistleblower cases and witness protection. Someone who knows how to navigate situations where regular channels might be compromised." She stared at him, fear and hope warring in her expression. "Do you really think this person can help?" "I think it's our best shot. We meet with them tomorrow. We tell them everything. And we let them guide us on what to do next. And if it goes wrong, then at least we tried. At least we didn't just give up and keep running." She was quiet for a long time. Then she walked over to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me, for believing this can be fixed." He held her, feeling her shake slightly in his arms. "We're going to get through this," he promised. "Together. Ram. We have starred." That night, for the first time since she'd showed up at his door, she actually slept for more than a few hours. Not peacefully, but she slept. And he watched over her, determined to keep his promise, no matter what it took. The lawyer's office was in a part of town he'd never been to before. It was a modest building, nothing flashy or impressive. Just a simple sign outside that read, "Legal Services," with a phone number underneath. That was exactly what they needed. Low profile, discreet. She was nervous as they walked in. He could tell by the way she kept fidgeting with her hands, by the way her eyes darted around, looking for exits and potential threats. He gently took her hand and squeezed it reassuringly. The receptionist led them to a small conference room. A few minutes later, the lawyer walked in. His name was Robert, and he was older than they expected, probably in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple suit and carried a worn leather briefcase. "Thank you for coming," Robert said, shaking both their hands. "I understand. You're in a difficult situation. Before we begin, I want you to know that everything you tell me is protected by attorney-client privilege. Nothing leaves this room without your permission." She nodded but didn't speak. She was clearly scared. Robert sat down across from them and pulled out a notepad. "Why don't you start from the beginning? Tell me everything." So she did. For the next hour, she told the entire story. From meeting David at the gallery to the jobs she'd done, from the final meeting at the hotel to the recording she'd made. She told him about running, about hiding, about the black sedan that had been following her. She left nothing out. Robert listened carefully, taking notes occasionally but mostly just absorbing the information. When she finally finished, he was quiet for a moment, processing. "This is serious," he finally said. "You've gotten yourself involved with organized crime, whether intentionally or not. The good news is that you have evidence. That recording could be extremely valuable to law enforcement." "But she's worried about corruption," he interjected, "about people on the inside who might tip off David's organization." Robert nodded. "That's a legitimate concern. Local law enforcement might not be the best route, especially if this organization has connections there. But there are other options. Federal agencies. The FBI has divisions that specifically deal with organized crime. They have the resources and the authority to operate independently of local influence." "Would they protect her?" he asked. "If what she has is as valuable as I think it is, yes. They have programs designed specifically for witnesses in high-risk situations. Relocation, new identity, ongoing protection. It's not perfect, but it's much safer than what you're doing now." She spoke up for the first time since finishing her story. "What would I have to do?" "You'd have to turn over the recording and testify about what you heard and what you know about the organization. You'd have to be willing to help them build a case. In return, they'd offer protection and potentially immunity from any minor charges you might face for your involvement." "Minor charges?" She looked worried. "You were unknowingly involved in criminal activity. Technically, that could be prosecuted. But given that you were coerced and that you're willing to cooperate, most prosecutors would offer immunity. They want the people at the top, not the people who got caught up in it by accident." "How long would this take?" he asked. "Building a case like this? Could be months. Could be years. It depends on how extensive the investigation becomes. During that time, she'd need to be in protective custody or witness protection." She shook her head. "Years? I can't hide for years." "You're already hiding," Robert pointed out gently. "The difference is that this way, you'd have the full resources of the federal government keeping you safe, instead of just running on your own, with dwindling options." They sat in silence for a moment. He could see her struggling with the decision. This wasn't what she'd wanted. She'd hoped for a quick fix, a way to make it all go away. But there were no quick fixes for something like this. "What if they find me before I can get into protection?" she asked quietly. "That's the biggest risk," Robert admitted. "The window between making contact with federal authorities and actually entering protection is vulnerable. That's why we need to be strategic about how we approach this." "How do we do that?" "We make the first contact carefully. I have connections with the FBI's Organized Crime Division. I can reach out unofficially, explain the situation, and gauge their interest. If they're willing to move quickly, we can arrange a meeting in a secure location. You hand over the evidence, give your statement, and they take you into immediate protection." "And what about him?" She looked at him with worried eyes. "If I disappear into witness protection, they might come after him to find me." Robert nodded. "That's also a concern. If they know about your relationship, they might try to use him for leverage. He'd need protection too, at least temporarily." "I'm not hiding," he said firmly. "I'll do whatever needs to be done to keep her safe, but I'm not running." "You might not have a choice," Robert said. "These people don't play by rules. If they think you know where she is, they'll come after you." The reality of the situation was sinking in. This wasn't just about her anymore. By helping her, by getting involved, he'd made himself a target too. But looking at her scared face, he knew he'd make the same choice again. "So what's our next step?" he asked. "Let me make some calls. I'll reach out to my contact at the FBI, explain the situation in general terms, and see if they're interested. If they are, we'll set up a meeting. In the meantime, you two need to stay out of sight. Keep moving. Don't stay in one place too long. And avoid any patterns they could track." They thanked Robert and left his office. As they walked back to the borrowed car, she grabbed his arm. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Once we start this process, there's no going back." "I'm sure. Are you?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'm tired of running. If this is the only way to actually end it, then let's do it." They drove back to the motel, but neither of them felt comfortable staying there another night. They'd been in one place too long. So they packed up their few belongings and found a different motel on the other side of town. That evening, Robert called. "I spoke with my contact. They're very interested. They want to meet with you tomorrow afternoon. I'll text you the address. It's a secure federal building. You'll be safe there." "Tomorrow?" She looked panicked. "That's so soon. The faster we move, the less chance they have to find you first," Robert explained. "Are you ready?" She looked at him, and he nodded encouragingly. After hanging up, they sat together on the motel bed, neither of them speaking. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on both of them. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "Me too. What if something goes wrong? What if they don't believe me? What if the recording isn't enough? Then we'll figure out plan B. But we have to try this first." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never meant for you to get dragged into all this. When I came to your door that night, I was just so desperate and scared. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm glad you came. I'd rather be here with you, facing this together, than have you going through it alone. You're probably the only good thing that's happened to me in months." They stayed like that for a while, just sitting together in the quiet motel room. Outside, traffic hummed past on the highway. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of the danger and drama happening all around them. That night, neither of them slept much. They were both too anxious about what the next day would bring. Around 2 a.m, he got up to get some water from the vending machine down the hall. When he came back, she was sitting up in bed, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I keep thinking about what happens after tomorrow. If I go into witness protection, I might never see you again. They might send me somewhere far away, give me a new name, a new life, and you won't be part of it." He sat down next to her. "Let's not think about that yet. Let's just focus on getting through tomorrow safely. But we should talk about it. We should prepare for the possibility that this is our last night together." "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true. Once I hand over that recording and enter their protection, my life becomes theirs to control. I won't get to choose where I go or who I see. That's the price of safety." He didn't know what to say. She was right. If she entered witness protection, especially for a case involving organized crime, the restrictions would be severe. Contact with her old life would be minimal or completely cut off. "Maybe they'll let you stay in contact somehow," he suggested, though he knew it was unlikely. Maybe. Or maybe this is it. Maybe after tomorrow, we become strangers again. Only this time, it won't be my choice. She started crying then, quiet tears running down her face. He pulled her into a hug, and she cried against his chest while he held her tight. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry for all of this. For leaving you before. For coming back and ruining your life. For dragging you into danger. You deserve so much better than this." "Hey, stop. You didn't ruin anything. You came to me for help, and I chose to help you. That was my decision, and I don't regret it. Even though it might mean losing me again? Even then, because at least this time, you'll be safe. That's what matters." They held each other until her tears stopped, until exhaustion finally pulled her into an uneasy sleep. He stayed awake, watching over her one more time, wondering if this really would be their last night together. The next morning came too quickly. They got ready in silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The meeting was at 2 in the afternoon, which gave them most of the day to kill. They couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. They just waited. Around noon, as he was checking the time again, there was a knock at the motel door. They both froze. Nobody knew they were here except Robert. "Don't answer it," she whispered, fear in her eyes. But then they heard Robert's voice. "It's me. Open up." He cautiously opened the door. Robert came in quickly, looking worried. "We have a problem," he said. "I just got a call from my FBI contact. They've had to move up the meeting. They want you there in 1 hour, not this afternoon." "Why?" "There's been activity. They've been monitoring David's organization as part of a larger investigation. This morning, there was increased chatter. They think something is happening. They want to secure you and your evidence as soon as possible. Do they think he knows where we are? They don't know, but they're not taking chances. We need to move now." The urgency in Robert's voice made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. They grabbed their things and followed him out to his car. He drove fast but carefully, constantly checking the mirrors to make sure they weren't being followed. "I'm going to take a route with multiple turns," Robert explained. "If anyone is tailing us, we'll spot them. Just stay calm." But calm was impossible. Her hands were shaking. His heart was racing. This was really happening. About halfway to the federal building, Robert made a sudden turn into a parking garage. "I saw something," he said. "A car that made the same last 3 turns we did." "The black sedan?" she asked, her voice tight with panic. "I don't know. I'm going to drive through this garage and exit on the other side. If they're following us, they'll have to follow us in. And we'll see them." They drove through the dimly lit parking garage, spiraling up to the 3rd level, then back down and out the opposite exit. Robert watched his mirrors intently. "I don't see them anymore," he finally said. "Either they gave up, or I lost them. Or they know where we're going," she said quietly. Robert's expression darkened, but he didn't argue with that possibility. He just drove faster. They arrived at the federal building with 10 minutes to spare. It was a large, imposing structure, with security checkpoints at every entrance. Robert led them through the main doors, past metal detectors and security guards, into an elevator that required a keycard to operate. "Once we're upstairs, you'll be safe," Robert assured them. "This building has security that even organized crime can't breach." The elevator opened on the 8th floor, and they were met by 2 men in suits. FBI agents. Clearly. They introduced themselves, but the names didn't register. Everything was moving too fast. They were led into a conference room where more people were waiting. Agents, prosecutors, people with laptops and recording equipment. This was real. This was happening. "Thank you for coming," one of the lead agents said. "We understand you have information about the criminal organization run by David Reynolds. We'd like to hear everything you know, and we'd like to see the evidence you mentioned." She looked at him one more time, and he gave her an encouraging nod. Then she took a deep breath and began talking. For the next 3 hours, she told them everything. They asked questions, took notes, recorded her statement. When she told them about the recording, they leaned forward with intense interest. "Where is this recording now?" the lead agent asked. "It's on a thumb drive, hidden in a safe place. We'll need to retrieve it as soon as possible." "Can you tell us where it is?" She hesitated, then gave them the location. "It's in a storage unit across town. Unit 247. The key is taped under the bathroom sink, at my old apartment." The agents immediately sent people to retrieve both the key and the drive. While they waited, they continued questioning her about names, dates, locations. She answered everything, as best she could. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, an agent returned with a small thumb drive. "We got it." They plugged it into a laptop and played the audio file. The room went silent as everyone listened to the muffled sounds of the meeting. The threats. The gunshots. When it ended, the lead agent smiled grimly. This is exactly what we needed. Combined with your testimony and the other evidence we've been gathering, we can bring down the entire organization. You've done the right thing by coming forward. What happens now? She asked. Now, we put you into protective custody immediately. You'll be taken to a secure facility where you'll stay until the trial. After that, if you want it, we can arrange witness protection with a new identity and relocation. And him? She pointed at him. He helped me. They might come after him. The agent looked at him. Do you want protection as well? He thought about it. His life, his job, his apartment, everything. Familiar. Could he really walk away from all of that? But then he looked at her frightened face, and he knew the answer. Yes, he said. I want protection. The agent nodded. Then you'll both be placed in protective custody together, at least for now. We'll assess the ongoing threat and make decisions about long-term arrangements later. And just like that, their old lives ended. They were led out of the conference room, down a different elevator, and into an unmarked van with blackened windows. The van drove for over an hour before arriving at what looked like a safe house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. This is where you'll stay for now, an agent explained. There will always be at least 2 agents here with you. Don't try to contact anyone from your old life. Don't use social media. Don't even look out the windows too much. We'll keep you updated on the case as it progresses. Then they were left alone in the safe house with their 2 assigned guards. The house was comfortable, but felt like a prison. They had everything they needed except freedom. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed in the unfamiliar house, she turned to him. I can't believe you chose this, she said. You could have gone back to your normal life. Instead, you're trapped here with me. I'd rather be trapped with you than free without you, he said simply. She kissed him then, and it felt like a promise. Whatever happened next, whatever the trial brought, whatever witness protection meant for their future, they'd face it together. Outside, the world continued without them. But inside the safe house, in that moment, they had each other. And that would have to be enough. 3 weeks passed in the safe house. 3 weeks of waiting, of being cut off from the rest of the world, of living in a strange kind of suspended reality. The FBI agents guarding them were professional, but not particularly friendly. They followed strict protocols, limited conversation, and made it clear that this arrangement was about safety, not comfort. During those weeks, prosecutors came and went, preparing her testimony, going over details again and again. They told her that David and several members of his organization had been arrested. The recordings she'd provided, combined with other evidence, had given them enough for multiple indictments. There would be a trial, and she would be the star witness. He watched her prepare, watched her relive those terrible memories over and over. It was taking a toll on her. She wasn't sleeping well. She was losing weight. The stress was crushing her slowly, but she never complained. She just kept answering questions, kept cooperating, kept doing what needed to be done. One afternoon, about a month into their stay at the safe house, the lead agent who'd first interviewed them came to visit. His name was Agent Thompson, and he had news. We've made significant progress on the case, he told them, sitting in the safe house living room. Thanks to your testimony and evidence, we've been able to connect David's organization to multiple crimes across several states. Money laundering, illegal trade, even connections to violent crimes. This is bigger than we initially thought. Is that good or bad? She asked. It's good for the case. It means we can put these people away for a very long time. But it also means the danger to you is more severe than we anticipated. These people have resources, connections, and motivation to silence you. So what does that mean for us? It means that after the trial, Witness protection isn't just recommended, it's essential. You'll need to completely disappear. New names, new location, new lives. And, he paused, looking uncomfortable. You'll need to cut all ties with your old life. Family, friends, everyone. She'd expected this, but hearing it stated so directly still hit hard. He saw her face fall, saw the weight of that reality settle on her shoulders. What about him? She asked, gesturing toward him. He didn't sign up for this. He was just trying to help me. Agent Thompson looked at him. That's actually why I'm here. We need to discuss your situation separately. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. What do you mean? You're not legally required to enter witness protection. You're not a witness. You haven't testified. The threat to you exists only because of your association with her. If you were to distance yourself from the situation, return to your normal life, you'd likely be safe. These people have no reason to target you if you're not with her. He felt her tense beside him. She knew what was coming. So you're saying I can leave, he said slowly. I'm saying you have a choice. She doesn't. You do. You can go back to your apartment, your job, your life. We'd provide security for a few months, just to be safe. But eventually, things would return to normal for you. And if I choose to stay with her, enter protection with her, then you'd be giving up everything. Your identity, your career, your family, your friends. You'd have to start completely over in a new place with a new name. And there's no guarantee that the arrangement would be permanent. Witness protection focuses on the witness. Partners and family members are accommodated when possible, but the program makes no promises about keeping couples together long-term, especially unmarried couples. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. He looked at her, and she was staring at her hands, refusing to meet his eyes. Can we have some time to think about this? He asked. Of course. But the trial starts in 3 weeks. We need to know your decision before then, so we can make appropriate arrangements. After Agent Thompson left, they sat in silence for a long time. The weight of the decision pressed down on both of them. You should go, she finally said. What? You should go back to your life. This isn't your burden to carry. You've already done so much for me. You've already sacrificed so much. I can't ask you to give up everything. I can't ask you to give up everything. You're not asking. They're offering me a choice. And the right choice is obvious. You'd be throwing your entire life away for what? For me? I'm not worth that. He turned to face her fully. Don't say that. You are worth it. No, I'm not. Look at what I've done to you. A month ago, you had a normal life. Now you're trapped in a safe house, being threatened by criminals, facing a decision that could ruin everything. All because I showed up at your door. I'm glad you showed up at my door. Why? Why would you be glad about any of this? He thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated. Yes, the past month had been terrifying and stressful, and completely upended his life. But it had also clarified something for him. Before you came back, he said slowly, I was just going through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I was fine, but I wasn't really living. I wasn't passionate about anything. I wasn't connected to anything. Then you showed up, soaking wet and terrified. And suddenly, everything mattered again. Suddenly, I had a purpose. Someone needed me. Someone trusted me. And I realized that I'd rather have a complicated, difficult life with purpose than an easy life that means nothing. That's not a good enough reason to throw everything away. Maybe not to you, but it is to me. She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. You're not thinking clearly. You're caught up in the drama, in playing the hero. But this isn't a movie. This is real life. And in real life, Sacrificing everything for someone doesn't end well. How do you know? How do you know how it ends? Because I'm not worth the sacrifice, she shouted suddenly, standing up. I'm not worth your career, your family, your identity. I'm just a person who made terrible choices and dragged you down with me. The smartest thing you could do is walk away while you still can. I'm not walking away. Why not? Give me one good reason why you'd choose this life over your real life. Because I love you. The words came out before he could stop them. They hung in the air between them, raw and honest and undeniable. She stared at him, shocked. You. What? I love you. I loved you before you left, and I still love you now. That's why I'm not walking away. That's why I'm choosing this. Because a life without you isn't a life I want anymore. She stood frozen, tears now streaming down her face. You can't love me. Not after everything. But I do. And I know you feel something too, or you wouldn't have come to my door in the first place. Out of everyone you could have gone to, everyone you could have trusted, you chose me. That has to mean something. She collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. He moved next to her and pulled her into his arms. She cried against his chest. Months of fear and stress and loneliness pouring out all at once. I do feel something, she finally admitted through her tears. I never stopped caring about you. Even when I left, even when I was running, you were the one person I couldn't forget. But that doesn't mean you should ruin your life for me. It's not ruining. It's choosing. There's a difference. They held each other for a long time. Both of them crying now. Both of them scared of what came next, but finding comfort in each other's presence. Over the next 2 weeks, they talked more about the future, about what witness protection would actually mean, about the challenges they'd face, about the possibility that the program might separate them eventually. They talked through every scenario, every concern, every fear. His family was the hardest part. He was close to his parents, his sister. The thought of never seeing them again, never being able to explain why he disappeared, broke his heart. But Agent Thompson had been clear. No contact meant no contact. Even a single phone call or email could potentially compromise their location. She offered many times to release him from the choice, to tell him it was okay to go back to his normal life. But every time, he refused. His decision was made. The trial began on a cold morning in early spring. She was terrified, but she walked into that courthouse with her head held high. He wasn't allowed in the courtroom, for safety reasons. But he waited outside every day, pacing the halls, checking the time, waiting for her to emerge. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Her testimony took 3 days. The prosecutors said she was incredible, that she remained calm and clear despite aggressive cross-examination from defense lawyers. The evidence, especially the recording, was damning. The defense tried to discredit it, tried to suggest it had been manufactured or edited, but forensic analysis proved it was authentic. When the verdict came in, it was guilty on all major charges. David and his top associates would spend decades in prison. The organization was effectively destroyed. Justice had been served. But justice came with a price. 2 days after the trial ended, they sat in a government office signing paperwork. New names, new social security numbers, new birth certificates. Their old identities were being sealed away, buried in classified files. They were becoming new people. Your new names are Ryan and Jennifer Peterson, the administrator told them. You'll be relocating to a small town in Montana. We've arranged jobs for both of you, a place to live, and the necessary documentation. A handler will check in with you monthly for the first year, then quarterly after that. Remember, no contact with anyone from your previous life. No social media under any name. No searches for information about people you used to know. Breaking these rules could compromise your safety and the safety of others in the program. Montana. He'd never been to Montana, but that's where they were going. That's where Ryan and Jennifer Peterson would start their new life. The actual move happened quickly. They were put on a private plane, flown to a small regional airport, and driven to a modest house on the edge of a town with a population of less than 3,000 people. It was so different from the city they'd lived in before. Quiet, rural, isolated. Their new house was simple but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a yard with a view of mountains in the distance. The handler showed them around, gave them phones with new numbers, left them welcome packets with information about the town. "Good luck," he said before leaving. "Most people adjust within 6 months. It's hard at first, but it gets easier." Then they were alone. Ryan and Jennifer Peterson, 2 people who hadn't existed a week ago, standing in a strange house in a strange town, starting a strange new life. The first few months were incredibly difficult. Everything felt wrong. The quiet felt oppressive after years of city noise. The isolation was crushing. She missed her family desperately, even though she'd been estranged from them for years. He missed his parents, his sister, his friends. They both missed their old names. It sounds like a small thing, but hearing a name that isn't yours, having to remind yourself to respond to it, constantly catching yourself before you say your real name, it wore them down, psychologically. There were nights when they both cried, wondering if they'd made the right choice. Nights when the weight of what they'd given up felt unbearable. But slowly, very slowly, things began to change. They found jobs. She worked at the local library. He got a position at a hardware store. Simple jobs, nothing like their old careers, but honest work that gave them purpose and routine. They met neighbors, friendly people who welcomed the new couple in town without asking too many questions. They got invited to community events, church potlucks, town festivals. They started to feel like part of something, and they had each other. Through all the difficulty, all the adjustment, all the grief for their old lives, they had each other. That constant presence, that shared understanding of what they'd been through, became their foundation. 6 months after arriving in Montana, they were taking a walk through the mountains on a Saturday afternoon. The fall colors were incredible. The air was crisp. And for the first time since entering witness protection, he felt something like peace. "How are you doing?" he asked her. "Really doing?" She thought about it for a moment. "I'm okay. Some days are harder than others. I still miss my old life sometimes. But this life isn't bad. It's just different." "No. Do you regret it? Coming forward, going through the trial, ending up here?" "No. I regret the choices that led to needing protection. But I don't regret doing the right thing in the end. Those people are in prison because I spoke up. That matters. And what about us? Do you regret that I chose to come with you?" She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Every day, I'm grateful you made that choice. Even on the hard days, even when I'm sad about what we lost, I'm grateful you're here. I don't think I could have survived this without you." "I feel the same way." They continued walking, hand in hand, up the mountain trail. When they reached a scenic overlook, with a view of the valley below, he stopped. "I want to ask you something," he said, feeling nervous suddenly. "What is it?" He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing fancy. Just a plain silver band with a small stone. He'd bought it with money from his hardware store paycheck, saved up over several months. "I know we've only officially been Ryan and Jennifer for 6 months, but we've been us for much longer. We've been through more together than most people experience in a lifetime, and I don't want to wait anymore." He got down on one knee. "Jennifer Peterson, or whatever your real name is, will you marry me?" She gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Are you serious? Completely serious. I want to build a real life with you. Not just survive in hiding, but actually live. Make this place our home. Start a family eventually if you want. Just be together. For real. Forever. Yes, she said, crying and laughing at the same time. Yes. Absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they held each other on that mountain overlook. Two people with new names and new lives, choosing to build a future together. They got married a month later at the small church in town. Their handful of new friends attended. It wasn't the wedding either of them had imagined for themselves in their old lives. There were no family members there, no childhood friends, no one who'd known them before. But it was real, and it was theirs. A year passed. Then two. Life continued in their small Montana town. They bought a dog, a golden retriever they named Buddy. She got promoted to head librarian. He started a small side business fixing things for neighbors. They bought a better house, made real friends, became genuinely part of the community. They still had hard moments. Holidays were difficult without family. Sometimes they'd see news from their old city and wonder about people they used to know. They'd never forget who they really were, where they really came from. But they were building something new, something good, something that felt surprisingly like happiness. 3 years after entering witness protection, she discovered she was pregnant. They sat together on their porch one evening, watching the sunset over the mountains, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Can you believe it?" she asked. 3 years ago, I was soaking wet and terrified, knocking on your door with nowhere else to go. Now look at us. I know. It's surreal. Do you ever regret it? Giving up your old life?" He thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss certain things. My family most of all. But regret? No. That old life was just existence. This is actually living. We're building something real here. I love you," she said. "I don't say it enough, but I do. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for not giving up on us. I love you too. And I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat." Their baby was born in the spring. A little girl they named Hope. It felt appropriate. After everything they'd been through, after all the darkness and fear and running, they'd found hope. Sometimes, late at night when he was feeding Hope while she slept, he'd think back to that rainy evening when she'd knocked on his door. How different his life would be if he'd made different choices. If he'd turned her away. If he'd chosen safety over love. If he'd walked away when given the chance. But he hadn't. And because of that, he was here now. In Montana, in a house full of love, with a wife and a daughter, and a life that felt meaningful. Their story wouldn't be in any history books. No one would write songs about them. Most people didn't even know what they'd been through. Ryan and Jennifer Peterson were just regular people in a small town, living quiet lives. But they knew the truth. They knew they'd face darkness together and come out the other side. They knew they'd sacrificed everything for justice and for each other. They knew that love, real love, sometimes requires choosing the difficult path. Years later, their daughter would ask them how they met, and they'd smile at each other with that secret understanding that only they shared. Then they'd tell her a simple version of the truth. "Your mom needed help," he'd say. "And I chose to help her. And that choice changed everything." It was the truth, just simplified. The whole truth was theirs to carry, theirs to protect, theirs to remember in quiet moments when they looked at each other and saw not Ryan and Jennifer, but two people who'd survived the impossible together. She came back, soaked in rain, and refused to leave his side. Their old lives were gone forever, buried in sealed files and distant memories. But their new life, built on sacrifice and trust and love, was more real than anything they'd had before. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.